Welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I am your host, Willy Bragg, and today my guest will be Angie Moon, who's from Ireland. Somebody I'm Twitter friends with. We never met in person, but she's really interesting and cool. And I was thinking, you know what, it'd be really neat to have her on the show. So I decided, you know what, let me go ahead and have her on the show here. So, Angie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Angie Moon. I am a classic rock storyteller, essentially. So I run a website called The Diversity of Classic Rock, which you can find at crazyonclassicrock.com. And occasionally I write some things about politics, and I take a lot of cool outfit pictures on Instagram.
All right. And so, as I said, I've noticed that 3 years ago, well, about a little over 3 years ago, I went to Ireland. So, and that's one thing that struck me on your profile, that you live in Ireland. So, what brought you from America to Ireland?
Okay, so I'm originally from Chicago, but I've moved around a lot. So I'm originally from a town near the Wisconsin state line, the Wisconsin-Illinois state line, called Gurnee. That's where Six Flags Great America is. Then I moved to Texas. Then I moved to Florida. Then I went to university in Toronto, starting when I was like 17. Then when I was 19, I moved to Chicago. And then I studied abroad in Ireland. So that's what brought me here. So while on study abroad, I met the man who is now my husband. And we ended up getting married in 2017. And I've been living in Ireland since 2016 because I came here to do a master's degree after I was finished with my bachelor's.
Okay. Yeah, Ireland was neat. A lot of history. Beautiful country. Best Guinness I've ever had in my life. Better than the Guinness I have here in stateside. So, and you said that I think you said don't get Guinness in Spain, right? That's what you were saying.
Yeah, before? Like everybody says that the Guinness is best in Ireland, but if you're in Cork, if you're going to Cork, make sure you get Murphy's or Beamish. I think is I don't know anything about drinking because I don't drink personally, but I think the Cork is definitely not Guinness territory. Guinness is the Dublin thing, so definitely get your Murphy's when you're in Cork. But yeah, everybody says that Guinness is much better here in Ireland, and a lot of it's due to the climate. Like if you're from a warmer climate, Guinness is just not going to taste the same. It just hits differently here.
Okay. Yeah. That's pretty much. I think I drank. I don't remember some of the other beers I drank. I sampled some of the others, but Guinness did stand out, and it did stand out superior to what I was used to in the stateside. And it was in Dublin, and it was in Galway, and so. Took the 2-hour train ride to and from, and that was beautiful countryside. I've never seen anything so green in my life as I saw in the Republic of Ireland there.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely beautiful here. Like I'm more of a big city person because I'm originally from Chicago, the Chicago area. But yeah, like it's just beautiful here. And the reason it's so green is it rains a lot, which makes me very depressed.
Yeah. Oh my God. It rained. It rained like there was no tomorrow. I mean, it was in October. It was like a constant drizzle. I mean, like maybe for about 5 minutes, I saw like a little bit of just a spark of light blue in the sky for about 5 minutes, and then it just started drizzling, and it was just and then when it didn't rain, it was still just like a gloomy clouds, just overcast.
Yeah, when it's sunny, it's very rare, and I make sure to take advantage of that when it's really nice out. We had some really hot days this summer, and it was awful because none of the houses here are built for that. We're not prepared for the heat. So just like people in Texas are not prepared for the snow, we are not prepared for the heat. We don't have air conditioning in any of the houses, and all the houses are built to trap in the heat because it's most of the time really cold like that. But that's climate change for you.
Well, I know I can imagine because when I was in London in 2006, I went there in late July, early August, and it was like at that time they said it was like the hottest summer in recorded history in London. It was like up in the high 90s, and they didn't have air conditioning at the Holiday Inn, and I was just like, wow, I'm paying to stay at the Holiday Inn, and there's no, and it was just kind of like it was just kind of I would just it was just a miserable experience not having air conditioning. I was just like and the cars didn't have air conditioning. It's just kind of like riding around in the 1970s and vehicles. There was a time in the 70s a lot of cars didn't have air conditions, and
Yeah,
it is
taking the tube during the summer is miserable. Like I was in London during the summer, and yeah, it's just hot and sticky in the tube.
Yeah, I absolutely. So I just can imagine, and I can imagine the electric, the power bills this winter, with the the Nord Stream pipeline going down and everything, heating up houses and everything. How's that in Ireland going on?
So yeah, like a lot of the cost of living, like anywhere else, has gone up like crazy. Like one of the things that I do find weird is that like how Russians would smugly say, "Oh yeah, well Europe's going to freeze," and then Europeans are like, "Well, what cold? Oh yeah, we're certainly freezing over here. We're like a lot warmer than Russia." But the thing is, we're a lot warmer than usual. So I don't know why we're just bragging about climate change and the effects of it to own Putin somehow. I'm like, I don't know how that's an own at all. I mean, yes, the war is bad, but like if climate change, if it screws up our planet, we don't have a planet. We're all dying.
Absolutely. Yeah. We definitely have a climate change problem because I'll say this from personal experience. I graduated from a high school in 1988, and this was in a little rural area of northeastern North Carolina. We had a large snow, like we did normal snowstorms when I was growing up. We had that large snowstorm. Went to college, did not see any snow. Did not see any snow for almost a decade. So from 1988 to 1996, did not see a drop of snow in North Carolina, in the three cities I lived at in between. Not one drop of snow. So anybody who tells me there's no climate change, they're full of shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like growing up, like the winters have just gotten worse. Like I grew up in the Chicagoland area, so I'm from Gurnee, and growing up we didn't have snow days at all in primary school. We didn't have snow days. You just went to school. That was it. Nowadays, I mean, there's snow days for like extremely cold days. I was like, we never had that when I was growing up. Now we do. It's insane.
Yeah. So yeah. So I was noticing just stumbled across your YouTube site. So you do some occasional streaming. So what got you into streaming when you were doing it? And
so I've done YouTube off and on throughout, even into my teenage years, but those videos are all gone. I used to just do rants, and I was just inspired by rant videos. I think one of my earliest inspirations was The Amazing Atheist, and I watched The Amazing Atheist ever since I was 14 years old in secondary school. Yeah, I don't really keep up with his work as much nowadays because I'm just so busy with my writing. But I was also a theater kid, and I did a lot of acting growing up. So in theater stuff, like I wasn't famous or anything. I just like to act. And I just like to perform, and I'm just a different person when I'm performing rather than in real life. Like in real life, I'm very shy, but I feel like when I'm performing, I can be something else. So my anxiety is just very strange in that way, that I can be on stage and not have very much anxiety at all. But if I'm having a conversation in real life with someone, I get very nervous. But yeah, I did that, and I'd gone to politics because my family would just talk all about politics all the time, and I grew up in various small towns around the U.S., and they were very conservative towns, and I stood out from everybody else because I was like one of the few liberals. Like back when I was growing up, I was a liberal, and then more recently I became a socialist, and that's definitely been quite a journey for me. But I haven't been doing as much videos just because it's just so much work. So I just do a lot of writing, which is where I find that I shine, because I don't know. Everybody just tells me I write well, so might as well do what I'm best at.
Right, right. Well, amazing. You mentioned amazing atheists and everything. Some of the commentaries I see kind of has a and this is a compliment, by the way.
Well,
Has
thank
a
you.
kind of a shoe on head quality about it. Do you
Thank
like
you
shoe
so
on
much.
head?
She's one of my favorites. I've watched her ever since I was an undergrad in university, so that would have been like 10 years ago. I watched her very early on, and I just loved her videos and her humor and just like the way that, she shows that you can be a leftist and you can have a dirtbag sense of humor. And I love that because that's the thing I miss about like the 2000s left is that, people they didn't have sticks up their butts. They knew how to have a sense of humor and just laugh at everything. And that's how I cope with everything in my life, whether it's my chronic pain issues or, dealing with, living below the poverty line. I'm just like, okay, might as well make jokes about it because no sense in just being miserable.
Yeah, well, yeah, Shoe on Head and she and Amazing Atheist and other streamers that I will listen to. That's my steady diet of streamers that I listen to. They tend to fit in that mold because they speak in a way that I think that they can speak to normies and let them know that left are not a bunch of pearl clutching. They're not reverse pearl clutchers, in other words, and that's what I like about it. And it's like the left as I am familiar and used to know them to be, because I when you run across some of the really preachy lefts, side of the left, the preachy side of the left are usually to our right.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like a lot of them, it's just like I've had my run-ins with SJWs or now wokes. I've had my run-ins with them, and the thing is, we'd either agree on the issues, or I'd even be more to the left than they are, and then they act like I'm a Trump supporter.
Same
But
here.
also, like I don't know, it's just like just the PC stuff. It just turns people off of the left, and I think one of the problems that the left has, and I've heard Kyle Kalinske, who's a major influence of mine, I've heard him say that, like, that's the problem. The left, the language is just too insular. It's too academic. It doesn't appeal to the masses. And the important part is we need to have the numbers. And the sad part is the left just doesn't have enough solidarity. It doesn't have enough people coming together and just setting aside our differences and just being like, look, we got to fight for our healthcare. We got to have housing for all. We got to have, tuition-free university. We need to, solve climate change. We need, the world's best infrastructure. And no, it's just, let's go fight over, woke issues. And both sides are guilty of this. It's like, oh, let's fight over these woke issues, these culture war issues. I think that's just dumb. It's a waste of time. It's a distraction.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the thing. I mean, I've been an LGBTQ supporter since the early 1990s, when people were making fun of me for supporting gay marriage or being offended. I mean, back in the days and everything. So, it's kind of like when I get lectured by, not to be ageist, but when I get lectured by usually some anorexic 19-year-old purple hair kid, telling me, like, what's up with me, why I'm such a reactionary. I'll be like, I have been more woke than you were, longer than you've been alive, young kid.
That's
so.
exactly, like, I've had like vegans say, oh, why aren't you, this preachy? And I'm like, I've probably been vegetarian longer than you've been vegan. And then, like, I've had some, younger, Gen Z members of the LGBT community just get angry at me, for how I might word things, because they say your language is too binaristic. And I'm just sitting here like, dude, who cares? Also, I've been out as bisexual since I was 14 years old. That's half my lifetime ago. Like, calm down.
Yeah, well, I don't go by labels. I go by what's right, and I'm just old fashioned. Equality. That's
Yeah,
what it goes
exactly.
down to. It goes down to this. You're a human being. You're treated as equal, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what it comes down to. Matters not what your race, your ethnicity, your religious or non-religious choice, your sexual orientation, or your gender situation, or what have you. You're a human being. That's all it takes. You're equal.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Like the thing is, we shouldn't be focusing on all of these things. Like the thing is, I was just scrolling down Twitter, and then I just saw, some, astronomy thing, and then I saw like some video of Neil deGrasse Tyson. Regardless of what you think of him, he was making a pretty good point of how, everybody, all these human beings, all us human beings, we're made of the same things that are in the universe. Like if you break it down atom by atom. So, bigotry, it doesn't make any sense. We're all made of the same shit.
Yeah, exactly. And and even people have views that we might not, whether they're minor issues that we will disagree with, or even some relatively large issues that we may find objectionable. The way I look at it is that, to a point, I'm going to say that we all, every person's evolved by their own environment and their own individual reality, kind of dictated to where they're at that point. And too often people are so quick to judge somebody else as evil. Because I know what it's like to be considered. I've been considered evil by right wingers as long as I could remember, and now some people on the left telling me I'm evil person too is pretty new to me. So.
Right. Like I hate all this follow policing, friendship policing. It just drives me crazy. It's just like, why are we focusing on all this drama stuff? Like that's what gets me about like all these, politics YouTube channels. They're all fighting with each other. And it all just seems like I'm in secondary school all over again. That's why I've tuned out of a lot of that stuff, is just because, like mentally, this is just awful for me, because like the news is already bad enough. Now we have all these people who are, supposed to be like, activists, and hey, we're supposed to be leading a movement, and it's like, no, we're just going to go fight over, oh, you support, force the vote, you don't support force the vote. It's just everybody's yelling at each other, or like they're just obsessed with each other's personalities. It's like, why are you obsessed with each other? Just shut up and just talk about the issues. Organize, do something.
True. And take somebody like Sam Cedar and Jimmy Dore. Yeah, while I lean obviously more toward the Jimmy Dore side than I would Sam Cedar side of the equation. You take a look at these two individuals, and they probably, if they heard me say this, they probably both would tell me to fuck off. But they both are 90% there on the same side, basically, and they both accuse each other of being a grifter, a sellout, right wing, or what have you. And I'm just like,
yeah, the thing is, it's just the narcissism of small differences. Absolutely. Like these people are just so obsessed with the minutia and all these little details. Like I've had leftists who are not vegetarian hate on me for being a vegan. And the thing is, like, look, if you want to eat meat, that's fine. I'm not even telling you to stop eating meat, but I'm giving you my arguments for why I'm a vegan. I would love to win more people over to the vegan side. That would be awesome. I'd even love people to be vegetarian, cut down their meat consumption, but like, don't be intellectually dishonest about the issue. That's all I think.
Yeah, actually, I do think it's smart to try to be a vegetarian, but it's just hard to do. And if I would, I personally could not do vegan because I love the dairy products way too much. I could give up meat quicker than the dairy.
Like that was definitely the tricky part for me. Like the reason I became a vegan, so a lot of people think, oh, you have to be vegan for animal rights. I'm like, no, the reason I went vegan at first was dairy was hurting my stomach. So that happened while I was here in Ireland. The dairy here is very high quality. That's why there's just such a high tax on Irish dairy products in America, is because no one would buy American dairy products if they had, the Irish products at a cheaper price or the same price as the American stuff. And the thing is, I don't know, for whatever reason, I was living with my vegan cousin, actually. My cousin was vegan at the time, and often what I was eating was vegan before I moved here to Ireland in 2014 to do my study abroad here. But then I started, I was like, oh, the cheeses here are good. So I started eating cheese. I didn't drink milk. I only would have cheese and yogurt. But I was starting to get like really bad gas, and it was just, I was farting constantly. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to stop eating dairy products or I'm going to make my husband miserable.
Yeah, yeah, it does have that effect. Yeah, too much dairy can have that effect. You're absolutely right about that. Yeah, and so just now it would make it easy for me to be a vegetarian. I love Italian food, so I love Italian food, and Italian vegetarian dishes are I can live off of. So
Oh
that's
yeah, like the food in Italy is amazing. I was in Italy last summer. It was really nice. I was in Rome, and yeah, I love the pizza and stuff. It's easy to be vegetarian there, but vegan is much harder. So the last time before that time I was in Italy, I was just a vegetarian. I was happy that I could try the Neapolitan pizza, like the real deal stuff. Once you have that kind of pizza, it's so hard to go back to any other type of pizza. Like the other types of pizza, I just don't understand them. I'm like, ew, why would I eat like regular American pizza when Italian pizza is just so amazing? And it's
um,
not even that expensive.
Yeah, yeah. I have family visiting right now. We sent out for pizza the other day, and we got Domino's, and it was like, just, yeah, disaster. So just I was like, and next time we get sent out for pizza, I'm going to go. There's a small pizza eatery. There's a small little eatery, a couple of miles, about a 10-minute drive away. I said I'll send out for that because it's owned by some actual Italians, and so we'll have some authentic New York style pizza done by some Italians, so it will be done correctly.
Yeah,
So
like that's the thing.
American style, though.
I write a lot of travel blog posts, and what I do is I make sure I talk about all the vegan eats, like wherever I go. And I do make it a point to go to local places and small businesses to try things that are unique. Because, like, when you're traveling, why are you going to go to the same places that you usually go to at home? Like, the whole point of traveling is to do something completely different from your everyday life. And that's what I make it a point to do whenever I travel.
Yeah, yeah, and as I said, I'm hoping to do some traveling next year. My plans next year is to go to Portugal, because and it will be in April of 2024 if I do go to Portugal. It's my plans, and I'm planning to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution. Which, are you familiar with the Carnation Revolution?
No.
The Carnation Revolution in Portugal was a socialist revolution sponsored by the military, because they had a fascist dictatorship. Nothing like, it wasn't like Hitler, or it was maybe a less severe version of fascism along the lines of Mussolini, but less severe. But it was still fascism. It was, and it was this right-wing government, and the military decided to overthrow the government, and was peacefully overthrown. The government gently collapsed in just one day, and it was called the Armed Forces Movement, and they challenged the government, and the government just toppled, and Portugal became a democracy in one day. It was called the Carnation Revolution. People were so happy about it that the streets were flooded with red carnations. The tanks had carnations all over it. The soldiers' uniforms and the barrels of the guns had carnations.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, there's a movie called April Captains. Came out in the year 2000. And it's about the Carnation Revolution. It's in Portuguese, but you can watch it with the English subtitles if you can. You can watch it for free on YouTube, but you have to find the ones with the English subtitles. But it tells you about the events and everything, and I highly recommend it. It's called April Captains.
Yeah, like one thing I do know about Portugal, I think they decriminalized all drugs, which I think is a very good thing. And that's definitely something I do want to see in Ireland, but I don't think that's enough. Like, that's the thing. I wrote a blog post actually on my politics Medium page, which my username on Medium is Angie Moon. And basically, I just talked about how I'm against decriminalization because I don't like half measures. I don't like incrementalism. And actually, my first blog post on Medium was about how much I hated incrementalism and neoliberalism. And I think the problem with that is, there's no urgency. Like, people just grow complacent. And then, but on the other hand, you could make the argument, well, we need to stop arresting people right now. And like, that's like one of the problems I have here in Ireland is I found that weed definitely helped me with chronic pain issues and my anxiety issues. And Like, I can't get that here because the list of conditions is so tiny for medicinal marijuana. I think only recently here, there was a woman who did get it for endometriosis. I also have that same condition, but they wouldn't, I have a feeling they wouldn't give it to me because I'm sure they just look at me and say, yeah, that person looks like a hippie. Or, you know, they might stereotype me because of my ethnic background. You know, I'm Latin American even. And I definitely, like here, I'm considered dark-skinned here. Well, you know, if I were to go to Venezuela, they'd call me a ghost. But anyway, like, yeah, that's just something I want to see happen is just weed legalized here, but I'm afraid it won't happen. And that's just one of the things that, like, I really want to dispel the myth of is that Europe is so much more progressive than America. It really isn't. There are certain issues that Europe is way behind America on, like birthright citizenship. Actually, one thing that I will give Ireland credit on is it was the last country in Europe to get rid of birthright citizenship. For a long time, Ireland did have it. If you were born here, you got Irish citizenship automatically. I think they should bring that back. Obviously, I think marijuana should be legal. I would say also shrooms should be legal. And I'd say the other thing that Europe could follow America on is free speech. So those are the three things.
There are some countries that are pretty good on free speech in Europe. Like Iceland is advanced on free speech so much so that there is a platform called Panquake. I don't know if you ever heard of Panquake.
No, I haven't heard of it.
Panquake could be, you might want to call it free speech Twitter. It could be a successor to Twitter if it works out. And what it is basically because there's so much online censorship and going on and people being thrown off, you know, accounts being suspended, you know, not just on Twitter but elsewhere too. But Twitter's notorious right now. They're talking about having an alternative to Twitter and, you know, and Facebook and, you know, something that's non-corporate and basically it's called a Panquake. A friend of mine told me about it last year, and then I found out a little bit about it more in the last few months, and it's piquing my interest. And people like Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal and people like Ron Placone and Nico House. Some of these folks have endorsed Panquake, so they got some major endorsers of this platform, and I'm like, these people are free speech absolutists. So it's like, okay, you know, Kim Iverson, some of these folks are like noted for their free speech absolutist positions. I'm like, if they're behind it, you know, I want to support this Panquake, and they don't have an extradition treaty in Ireland or anything like Iceland. So the Department of Justice can't sit there and make life hell for the government of Iceland with having it over there, having it hosted in Iceland. So yeah, and I think that Spain and Portugal are pretty good on free speech issues. But I know that Ireland, I know that the UK and most of Central Europe, pretty much the continent of Europe are pretty behind on issues.
It could be better. Yeah, I don't like. It's not literally like 1984 or anything like that here, but you know, I do, you know, worry a bit, and I just prefer, like, you know, the American way of doing things as far as free speech, because I'm very much a free speech absolutist. I studied journalism here, and like part of that was I had to do a media law class, and the libel laws are completely different in Europe, where, you know, let me see. So in America, like, if I think the burden of proof is, I don't know, the burden of proof is just different depending on which, like, my brain isn't working right now.
I know what you mean.
Is different. Yeah,
because
on different sides.
There are, like, Donald Trump wanted to harmonize the libel laws in the United States with the UK, which is terrible, because in the UK, you know, somebody that's a blogger.
Yeah, the journalist has to defend. The journalist's burden proof is on them. Well, in the US, you know, you can't just easily silence a journalist.
Exactly. So free speech is one thing the United States may have going for them, but it's going in a negative direction here too, because and here's the thing I tell people, I know there are so-called woke skulls and SJWs, but it's the right wing here in this country too. I mean, half the states criminalized BDS. You cannot, you're not allowed to urge a boycott of Israeli made products or whatever. You're not allowed to urge people to boycott products who or boycott Israel, or you could be fined up to $250,000 and put in prison for 20 years. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, nobody's mad at Norway, but you know what? Why should the United States government criminalize what country you can and cannot boycott?
That's just a violation of free speech right there. Like,
yes.
That's the thing. People should be free to vote with their wallets. And like, how do you even enforce that anyway on an individual level? I don't know how you can even do that. It doesn't make any sense. It's a nonsensical law. Like, I describe myself as a libertarian socialist. And like, one of the things I hate is pointless laws and laws that you can't enforce. I hate those. It's a waste of time.
It's so vague, I mean, and it just, and it's an example of right wing political correctness. So you go ahead and try to implement that law, and it's not. I mean, it's there to. It's a law created basically by shit libs and neocons. It's a fairly bipartisan law. Legislation, because the legislation is bipartisan, and it was basically created to silence opposition on the thorny subject of Israel Palestine, and I tell people, criticizing the country, the nation of Israel is not anti-Semitic. You're criticizing.
No, it isn't.
It's just criticizing an action.
It's like one of those things I'm sick of. It's all these double standards, like I don't get it. Like, why is it that like criticizing Israel is a no-no? Like, I'm of Jewish ancestry. I'm half Jewish. I have family in Israel, as a matter of fact. And some of my family there actually, I have one family member there who's a refusenik. He refused to serve in the IDF. Incredibly brave of him to refuse to serve. And yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Like, like, sure, you can criticize Israel, you can criticize any country's government. And the thing is, China's doing the same thing too, where they conflate, criticism of the CCP with, anti-Asian bigotry. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't like, whenever people criticize, America, they're criticizing the government. I don't feel like they're criticizing me. I don't take it personally at all. I have plenty of criticisms of the United States. Like, one thing that does bother me a little bit is when, I think people are just being a bit unfair to America, or they act like all high and mighty compared to America. Like, definitely I see a little bit of that problem. I've lived in Canada. I've lived in Ireland. I've talked to a lot of people around Europe, and yeah, there are some people that can act very holier than thou compared to Americans acting like, oh, we don't have that problem here. We don't have that problem in Canada. We don't have that problem in Europe. It's like, no, you do have that same problem. It's just that America is a convenient distraction.
Well, when somebody tells me, somebody will throw the anti-Semitic label on me when I criticize Israel, I'll tell them, look, I'm criticizing them for the treatment of the Palestinians. Now, ironically, when I tell them, I'll rebuttal to them, what I'm going to tell you, what I like about Israel, y'all are not going to like socialized medicine. But those people are like, oh, no, we don't want that. We don't want that, And
ironically, it's the Americans paying for socialized medicine in Israel. Americans give so much money to Israel. So I'm like, okay, America does have universal health care. If you're Jewish, you can just make aliyah.
Yeah,
I want everybody to have health care in America. Jewish or Gentile.
We pay for universal health care in Israel. We pay with the occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan. We pay for their universal health care. The $100 billion that we have given in the past year to the Ukraine, we kind of have continued their universal health care system.
America's just the sugar daddy for all these countries.
We have all kinds of universal health care systems around the world. But what do? We tell people here, even a public option, a weak-ass public option, we tell them here, we can't afford it. How can you pay for it? How can you pay for it? I'm like,
Always money for another war, never money to help the people out. Yeah. And we have, like, a lot of people assume that every country in Europe has universal health care. And I want to just say that that is a myth. Here in Ireland, we do not have universal healthcare. We have a slightly better situation than the US, like a slightly better, I guess, similar way of it than the US. So we have a thing called the medical card, and the income threshold for that is a bit higher. Like I have a medical card currently right now. But the thing is, the medical card pays for fuck all, really. And they've been cutting down like what it pays for. And the thing is, there's a large number of people who are in the pickle. So I think about a third of Irish people have a medical card, and that covers, your emergency room visits and your doctor's visits and any referrals to specialists, if you can even get to a specialist, which I'll get to that later. But like they've cut that down. A lot of people can't get a GP, like their own like general practitioner. They can't get that right now. So it just sucks for a lot of immigrants who are new to this country. They can't get healthcare that they need, so they go to the A&E and they clog that up, and that's full of trolleys full of old people. And I had my own issues with the healthcare system here, so I'll talk briefly about it. So I mentioned I had endometriosis earlier in the stream, and I've had very painful periods ever since the age of 13. And I thought I had endometriosis then when I was like 15, and a doctor possibly brought up, yeah, you could have it, so we'll just put you on birth control, so we'll kick the can down the road. So I was on birth control between the ages of 15 and 27. And, my periods got really bad in 2020. So like for 4 years before that, I had no periods. It was great. I had no pains. I could do everything. I was having the time of my life traveling. I got married, graduated from university. And then, my period pains got really bad right around the start of the pandemic. And that was horrible timing because like the healthcare, there was already long wait times before that. It skyrocketed. The wait times have skyrocketed. And there's more and more people coming into Ireland. And the thing is, we don't have more doctors. We don't have more houses. And, like people who are from here are being let down by their own government. Like there's a large rate of Irish immigration right now. And it's just really sad. Like, how can you be born someplace and then just like, I don't know how you can lead a country and then, let down your people. I don't know how you can do that. But anyway, with my situation, so I waited until like the end of 2021 when finally, we had, the COVID shots, and, doctors' offices were hopefully not overloaded with COVID patients. I mean, they aren't as much because the vaccines and stuff like that, but there's still like a lot of wait times. But I got referred to a gynecologist, and I opted for a private one, and I decided I'm just going to pony up the money for it because, the wait times are crazy to get, to get any appointments here in Ireland. Like you can be waiting years to see a specialist. And so I waited months to see a private gynecologist. Like this is private. This is something I'm paying for out of my own pocket, €200. And, I go there and I beg to get a hysterectomy. And I got approved on the first try, which is a complete miracle, but I really did have bad pain. So maybe they did see that in my speech to them of how badly I needed a hysterectomy. So the thing is, I was put on the public system waiting list, and I was hoping to get it here in the public system in Ireland. But, from what I was hearing, it was like, it would be years before I get my surgery. And I couldn't wait that long. I was on some sort of stopgap treatment that would stop my periods. And, I was still anxious because I didn't know when they'd start again. But anyway, I decided to just make calls around the place and try to see where I could get my surgery abroad. And so I called a place in Lithuania, and I got my surgery there for a fraction of the cost of how much it would cost here privately in Ireland. So here privately in Ireland, it would cost €8,000, which that's a small amount compared to what it would cost in America, which it would be like $50,000, $100,000 for same surgery in America. But €8,000 is a lot of money. Most people don't have that in their savings. So I go to Lithuania and I got the surgery for €2,800, which is still a lot of money because most people, they don't have that kind of money in their savings. And then you have to add on the travel costs. You have to add on all that stuff. But anyway, like I quickly sorted out the surgery in Lithuania. I got my surgery date and everything. And like the week I was supposed to leave, the week before I was to leave for surgery in Lithuania, I got a letter asking me if I was still needed on the waiting list. And one of the reasons to drop me off the waiting list was patient has deceased. Like there's enough people that die on waiting lists that is an option. It's just depressing. Everything just takes forever here in Ireland. And, I go over to Lithuania, I got my surgery, and the clinic was very clean and modern, much better conditions than in Ireland. And the thing is, like, people stereotype Eastern Europe as backwards when it really isn't at all. Like, it's much more modern than Ireland. Ireland is definitely, has a lot of modernizing to do. But anyway, I'm just glad that I got my surgery here, not here, in Lithuania, before I leave for England, which is where my husband's living right now. And yeah, because I've heard the NHS is now in shambles. Like, that's the thing. I've heard rumors that England are going to try to do what Ireland are doing and charge for doctor's visits.
They need to fight like hell for it because...
Oh, yeah. They need to learn from the French. The French, they know how to fight. The thing is, in England and Ireland, people are just, they have this attitude of, oh, sure, it'll be grand, whatever. They, just be pushovers, be complacent. And I'm like, you can't do that. It's much harder to get things back than to fight for it in the first place.
Exactly. And they need to fight like hell for it because the NHS, when it was created in 1948 in Great Britain, was actually to get a healthcare system more socialized than it was in the heyday of the NHS. You have to go to Cuba or someplace like that. And I would say in the Western world, probably even like that today. So the British need to dump the Tories, and the socialists need to basically, and they're going to have an easier job than socialists trying to reform the Democrats. The socialists are in a better position in the Labor Party to do that in the Labor Party because Labor Party is already a socialist party. The Democrats were never a socialist party. So, I
mean, definitely in Labor, there's a couple factions. I don't know too much, so I don't want to speak too much definitively. But yeah, like there's some people who are very neoliberal in the Labor Party. And then there's some people I hate New Labor. I hate them absolutely. I miss socialism. Like, that's the thing. Like, I remember reading a quote, like I did some research for blog posts about classic rock and socialism. And I had like a list of classic rockers who were socialist or leftist. And I remember reading this one quote by Brian Eno, and he was talking about how, a lot of people think of like the mid 20th century as the golden age of capitalism. But he said, the reality is it was the golden age of socialism. And it was especially better in the UK than the US. Like, you thought the US was fine, like in the mid 20th century. No. The UK was even better. It was the most socialist that it had ever been. You had the NHS, you had tuition-free university, you had like proper welfare and stuff like that. I mean, things were pretty great. Like, and then, slowly but surely it was all chipped away. And then
chipped away, and then Thatcher gutted it away by the 1980s. Yeah.
And then the 90s, and now,
Yeah, because I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And the thing is, like, as I did some more studying about like socialism and classic rock, a lot of these problems, they were visible in the 60s. And, sometimes I'll look at these socialist songs, like socialist or leftist themed songs that are very political in the 60s. And I'm like, whoa, they predicted the world that we have today. Like people will say that about The Simpsons. Oh, The Simpsons predicted this problem. It's like, no, I think these problems have always existed and people have always been the same. And I'm starting to do some work on a blog post about the whole don't trust anyone over 30 and just rethinking that idea. So I'm definitely going to... And actually, like, the real context of that quote is just completely different. Like, people misinterpret that. Like, they misinterpret a lot of things. But yeah, classic rock stuff, a lot of it's misinterpreted. And like, a lot of songs are very sarcastic politically. People just take it at face value. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I have autism and I even can tell that it's sarcastic. But maybe that's just because I'm, classic rock is my special interest. But anyway, where was I getting there? So with like classic rock songs, predicting issues that we have now, no, these issues were still there in the 60s. Like, there was still a lot of poverty. Like, one song that I think of when I think of 1960s poverty, like poverty in the 60s, was Dead End Street by the Kinks. And that song was written right around the time of the Aberfan disaster in Wales. And, that song was written, about people who were just living on Dead End Street, these people who didn't have any opportunities and they wanted to emigrate, but they didn't have the money. And, you're dealing with like living in a slum and stuff like that. And that was actually one of the first the music video for Dead End Street, which you can find on YouTube. That was one of the first music videos to tell a story. And what I'm getting with that is, so the main songwriter of the Kinks is Ray Davis. One thing that a lot of people don't know about him is that he is a socialist, and he has said it like in interviews multiple times. And I talk about that on my blog. And there was one quote that Ray had in his book X-Ray, and it was about, how he was very cynical about the whole idea of the swinging 60s. Because if you look at who ran things and ran the show in the 60s, it wasn't these young people at all. It was, just the same old people in the establishment, with more conservative ideas than the youth. Like, the youth never run anything. And yeah, like he said, like there was still a lot of poverty. And the thing is, like, sure, the 60s was a very prosperous time for a lot of people. But the thing is, the show would end and there would be these recessions in the 70s. And, what happens when the party's all over? So that quote I actually talk about in my first Medium post, where I talk about, incrementalism, and I rant about that and the problems with it. And I quote a couple other socialist quotes. They're pretty interesting. And it actually started with me, that blog post. It's a very long one, but it started with me. So I was just doing a bunch of reading, and, there's Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail, the whole idea of like the white moderate and how he criticized that. And I found a quote that had a very similar idea that was said about 70 years before Martin Luther King wrote that. And that was in Oscar Wilde's The Soul of Man Under Socialism. The worst slave owners were the ones who were kind to their slaves. And that quote stuck with me. That stuck with me in my head. And then I compared those two quotes, and then I just threw Ray Davis's quote at the beginning just because I wanted to throw something classic rock related in there. So I just took like 3 socialist quotes and just wrote a whole rant about incrementalism. And that's kind of how I started that Medium page, because I was like, I can't put that on my classic rock blog.
Well, I will when I do my editing tonight. I will put down all the links. I will add that link in there to urge everybody to go and to check it out and everything. And
thanks.
Yeah. So and I will definitely do all I can do a shout out and all. So
thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now,
yeah, apologize for rambling about that article, because I that was something I was very passionate about, and I wanted to make that blog post into a video, but I never did, because I just was so tired. And then I have a book I'm writing currently about classic rock, and yeah, it just takes up a lot of my time.
You let me know when the book is completed and published. I will be sure to buy a copy.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to promote it. Like, I do want to go everywhere and promote my book. I have a lot of big plans. I have like photo shoot ideas planned. I even have the book cover idea in my head. I know exactly what I want. And I think I've alluded to ideas of what I want it to be. And that's something I'm pretty excited about, my book.
Now, you were talking about the classic rock connections to socialism and everything. Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, he's quite the controversial troublemaker these days.
I love him.
I
love him so much. Like, that was definitely one of the best concerts I ever been to, was The Wall, and I think I went like a decade ago. That was incredible.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because he's been causing a lot of controversy. Every time he opens his mouth, people smear at him. But I mean, what is he saying that's so wrong? Is what I'm, I
definitely disagree with a couple things he says. Like, I definitely think, sometimes he gives a bit too many passes to Russia and China, and I think I don't really like his support of the current regime in Venezuela. I definitely, as much as I'm a socialist, I definitely have a lot of problems with authoritarianism. And, it does make me think of a quote that Joe Strummer said sometime. And I talk about it in my own blog post about leftist classic rockers. And Joe Strummer was like, I don't like the USSR. I find it too authoritarian. And, it's not what real socialism is about. And that's how I feel about Venezuela. A lot of my family have run away from there.
Well, here's the thing about Venezuela. I think a lot of it has to do with the U.S. embargo and it's.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't help any.
Yeah, I think that the bullying. Same thing with Cuba. And I don't endorse every some of the concerns you express, I do have as well. But I think the reason those things are happening is because of the U.S. meddling in there. Because the United States likes to sit there and meddle in other countries' affairs way too much. And
Team America World Police is what I think of. I think of that movie. And like that theme song just makes me laugh the entire time. And there's people who think that it was not ironic. I'm like, no, it was totally ironic. I mean, who really like believes those lyrics at face value? That is just like it's such a parody. It's honestly a parody.
The United States government will find a way to take care of a country, or when they do things or go in a direction that they don't like, they'll try to make a lot of trouble, and that's what it comes down to, and I think that's what's going on with regard to Cuba, with talking about Venezuela, even a country like New Zealand. Norman Kirk, I believe is his name, the prime minister, mysteriously found dead in 1974. Rumor is CIA had him assassinated. He was poisoned possibly by the CIA. That's the rumor. Conspiracy theory, it may be, but he was opposed to nuclear weapons testing in the South Pacific, and he made a big deal about it. And then he was dead.
and that sort of stuff happens within the U.S. too. I mean, look at what happened with Fred Hampton or Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, JFK even, like that's the thing. Like I actually, I'm not going to give away the topic of my book, but somewhere in the book, I do talk about the Kennedy assassination. And, it wasn't something I thought much about because we didn't talk too much about 20th century, mid to late 20th century history in the US. We never talked about that in history class. We only talked about older stuff. And I never really thought much about the Kennedy assassination, but I was like, shoot, whatever the official government narrative is, I think it's cap. The CIA had to have something to do with that. And if they do this sort of stuff in Latin America, like they do this and all over the world, why wouldn't it happen, in our own country, on our own, in our own borders? And and then also learning that JFK supported Medicare for all, I was like, yeah, come on, the CIA had to have something to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm, and this is what I understand here today when we have a lot of supposed liberals all of a sudden favoring our FBI and our CIA here is making me think of that Phil Oakes song, Love Me, I'm a Liberal. I
love Phil Oakes. I love that song. That song was actually one, I think I referenced it actually in that first blog post, where it's basically the song format of Martin Luther King's White Moderate.
That's basically it. And
under socialism,
Yeah, the white moderate today is what we call the shit libs. And I get a lot of pushback by some progressives. I wish you stopped using the term shit libs. I mean, I'm like, if AOC would be as radical as she was 4 years ago, then I would stop using the term shit libs. But I've been disappointed by some of these progressives that they promised that they were going to go and start a ruckus and do radical change. And once Biden came in there, they folded their arms, say, "Oh, we can relax now. We don't have to do anything."
All these AOC defenders just remind me of the Elizabeth Warren supporters, who got mad at all the Bernie bros who just tweet snake emojis at her. And I'm like, no, these people, I swear, in the 60s, they would have called Martin Luther King supporters King bros, or probably something worse than that, to be honest. They would have done something worse than that.
MLK was demonized by a lot of the establishment back in the day. People look back and be like, Martin Luther King was like a revered figure back then. No, he wasn't. They do
so much historical revisionism of that. And it also it's so tone deaf of the FBI to start tweeting things. Oh, we're commemorating Martin Luther King. Fuck off. You killed him. Fuck off.
Have you ever seen the 1989 film, Mississippi Burning?
No, I have not.
I highly recommend it, but here's where the revision is. the movies about the 3 civil rights workers that were killed in 1964, summer of 1964 in Mississippi by the Klan. And so the FBI, and it's based on a true story that the FBI came down there to investigate it. But the problem with the film is they made the FBI as the absolute good guys in the film. And the FBI were making, I mean, in some ways, the FBI, in many ways, the FBI were anti-Klan, but the FBI did not really have any use for the civil rights movement either. They were not lockstep in solidarity with MLK,
That's the thing. Like, the thing is, like, so much politics in the US, Democrats versus Republicans. I mean, the parties aren't very different after all. And then it's all very tribalistic and nobody has principles. And I notice a lot of similarities here in Ireland where the 2 major parties, so Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, are exactly the same. And I'm hoping that, Sinn Féin actually, support actual, progressive things and, get in touch with the young people and, what they want and, don't betray, your the socialists here in Ireland. Like, Ireland has a strong, history of socialism.
Absolutely.
And so does the UK. Like, the UK has a very strong, history of socialism as well. Like, I was thinking about one song that I've been listening to a lot is The Bells of Rumney, I think is the proper Welsh pronunciation. I hope that's correct. But yeah, that was written by a working class poet named Idris Davis. And it's like kind of a nursery rhyme. So the oranges and lemons nursery rhyme, but it was with a socialist twist and a Welsh twist where, he talked all about like the coal miners' strikes in the 1920s. And it was made, I'm trying to think which, I think that was Pete Seeger who did a version first. And then the Byrds covered it. And then there's also a very good version by Graham Parsons. And I found that on YouTube. That was pretty cool.
Right.
But yeah, like, that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of socialism, socialist history in not just Ireland, but the other Celtic countries like Wales. Like the NHS was started by Nye Bevan. Like, he was the guy who was, he was like one of those guys who was behind it. And then Scotland definitely is doing pretty well as far as like left-wing ideas. And I hope Scotland gets independence. That would be amazing.
You know what's interesting about Scotland? After Margaret Thatcher did her number throughout, I mean, Scotland was probably the least harmed because Scotland is probably the most left-wing part of the British Isles because there's still a lot of the welfare state and the NHS and everything has probably been the most.
University's still free in Scotland and prescriptions are free there too.
Yes. Yeah, so the Scottish, they have done well to fight Thatcherism in Scotland. So the Labour in Scotland is a hell of a lot more left wing than in England and Wales.
And they have the SNP.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping that I hope that when Scotland separates, it does inspire the other countries in the UK. I hope that the Welsh have their independence movement. I hope that Northern Ireland joins the Republic. I would love to see that. Anything to stick it to the man. Let's stick it to the man.
Yeah, unite unite the 6 counties back with the Republic. I would love to see that. And I was in Dublin Castle in 2019, and I was in the sleeping quarters of James Connolly, and I would just I was like, wow, because I mean,
he was a socialist.
He was a socialist. Yes, he was a socialist.
And I think he organized workers wherever he went. He would organize workers in the various workplaces, and he was just very charismatic.
Absolutely.
And that's the sad part about Ireland. We, everybody was like all these, people who fought for Ireland's independence, they were all socialists and they were all killed, all of them. And then what do we have left? We had fascists left and we had, extreme religious people left. And, that's why Ireland's kind of a mess now. And it just makes me so sad, because like the thing is, like my husband, he's from here. He has a lot of friends who've left and a lot of them say they like Ireland well enough. And they would stay if the housing wasn't so expensive, if the cost of living wasn't so expensive, and there were better opportunities and better bang for your tax dollars or no tax money. They don't use dollars here, but you know what I mean.
I know what you meant. The analogy, yes.
Yeah, it's really bad, and like it's just sad. Like my husband jokes that he's been exiled to England because he doesn't drink.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just, look, I took it for granted, or took it at face value that that Ireland was kind of just a default social democracy, but it just sounds like with getting back to the healthcare system, it sounds like it might just be a less shitty version of Obamacare.
It is essentially, and I've heard of like Care, if I remember correctly, it's just making everybody get insurance. So I'm like, oh, so this is just rebranded Obamacare. This is just Obamacare slapped with an Irish name on it. Like, no, that's dumb. I want an NHS here. That's what I want. I think everywhere should have something like the NHS. Yes. Dental care needs to be covered. Vision needs to be covered. Mental health care needs to be covered. Everything needs to be covered. It all needs to be free at the point of service, because no one should go without. No one should have to worry, oh, well, should I decide between, food or going to the doctor? That shouldn't be something that's a factor. The only reason you don't go to the doctor is you're afraid. The only reason you don't go to the dentist is you're afraid.
Kind of like here.
I called myself out. I haven't gone to the dentist in years because I'm afraid.
No, it's expensive. There's some dental work I need to have done here, but I mean, it costs. It'll cost me. It'll cost me $700 some dollars every 6 months to have taken care of with it, and I'm covered with dental. That's the horrible part.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Like, I think of the insurance companies in the U.S. sort of like a mafia, like the Cray twins. Like, I think of them like the Cray twins. Like, you got to pay protection to the Cray twins to protect them from, they are creating the problem and then selling you the cure, supposedly.
Yeah, and I just it's great that you can say I'm for Medicare for all and not have people think you're just the most evil person in the world. But now that the stigma of Medicare for all is not, people don't look at you like you're the spawn of Satan anymore. Now let's go and work for Medicare for all. No, they can't do that. I mean, they're just sitting there, sitting on their duffs and not doing it. And I think as long as we have a two-party system in this country, I'm convinced as long as we have a two-party system in this country, we're never going to have
they're all bought and paid for, and it doesn't matter what age. I think that whoever gets into office, these are people who are already, in the establishment. They're already in that big club. They are already just out of touch with your average people. And like, they're bought and paid for. They're never going to be fighting for us. They're only fighting for themselves and their buddies, their rich buddies.
They pretty much control all the Republican Party, and they control almost all the Democratic Party. And those Democrats are going to make sure that the few Democrats that may want to do away with private health insurance and do away with big pharma, they're going to make sure that they tote the line and not do anything about it. So we got to do away with the two-party system. We need a third.
We need
party.
A real socialist party in America.
Yeah,
we need a real socialist party. I mean, I always fantasize about running for office, but my husband is always like, you're going to just do the assassination speed run. You're just going to get assassinated quicker than anybody else.
Well, I would say even in Ireland, I would think that socialism is less of a dirty word than it is in the United States.
In Ireland, yeah, definitely less so. Because of the long history, because of the people, who fought for our independence. Like, if you look at the proclamation, it says Irish men and Irish women. Now, part of that is because Ireland got its independence way later than other countries. But yeah, I mean, I do like that, people aren't as scared of socialists here. But even then, I see a lot of people, hating on AAA PBP, or no, they're called Solidarity now, but they were called AAA PBP when I moved here. And it's just sad.
Are you familiar with a city councilwoman in Seattle, Washington, named Kashama Sawant?
Yeah, I've heard her name before. She's pretty cool.
Yeah, she's not running for re-election, and she started an organization called Workers Strike Back. And for what I can understand, the focus is basically to not focus as much on electoral politics, but to focus on the labor movement as a whole. And I think that and I'm interpreting this as a commitment to some kind of a labor party in America to be built down the road. That's how I'm looking at it. Maybe other people were looking at it at another way, but and that's fine. But well, something that's kind of has to be a new approach to what's, because what we have been doing for God knows how long in this country has not been working. And so I put much more hope in someone like, not as an individual, but she seems to have given me the most hope of any individuals since Bernie Sanders. And I still kind of like Bernie Sanders, but I lost some hope. I think
he just cucked way too much, in my opinion. And I think, in a way, I think about Phil Oakes and how he said he felt like he died inside in 1968, after the DNC then. And that's how I felt, when Bernie lost that first time. And then again, that second time, I died even more inside. And it just makes me so sad, because I think America could have been so much better with Bernie. I mean, yeah, sure, I got to temper my expectations a bit, but I definitely learned from that, never to put your hopes in one person. It's all about the ideas at the end of the day, not about people. And I don't like the whole idea of the cult of personality. We need to move away from that and just have a movement in general, not focus on people, but on just improving people's lives.
And that was been my problem too, because I am basically a recovering Bernie, not just a recovering Bernie bro, but when I tell you that I was a Bernie cultist, I mean, I was like a deranged Bernie cultist, like going back to the 1990s. So I make the average Bernie bro look like a Hillary Clinton supporter, a Kamala Harris supporter by comparison. I mean, I was one of those people online that people cringed at years ago. So, and now I'm just kind of, I don't hate them, but I look at Bernie and I'm just having to shake my head, and I'm like, okay, you fought the good fight. I don't want you to run in 24. I thought I did at one point. You don't need to run in 24. I barely want you to run for re-election as a U.S. senator.
What I want him to do is have like a protege or somebody, who could follow in his footsteps. Exactly. Possibly. Like, there's a lot of young people who think just like him, and that's what we need. We need new blood in Congress. There needs to be term limits in Congress.
So what is the only successor? It isn't AOC. She's not it. It isn't Tulsi Gabbard.
And Tulsi, that one broke me too. Like, what the heck happened to her?
Yeah,
it makes me so sad.
Yeah, and the thing is, Tulsi and AOC used to be my favorite members of Congress, but they both, I know they don't like each other, but they were both my favorite members of Congress when they were serving together, and so I'm just like, and they both taken directions that I just am not comfortable with, and so it's just kind of like, because Kshama Sawant's probably the only person that could be arguably the logical successor to Bernie at this point.
Yeah,
she's trying something new.
Yeah, and that's definitely what we need. Like, that's the thing. We got to learn from the mistakes of the past, and to make a better future. And like, that's the thing. We can't keep doing the same old, same old. We have to try something different if it doesn't work.
Absolutely. So, and all that. We're running. It's like we're over an hour, and I mean, I could keep going with this interview, but you probably, I don't know how long you want to keep this going. So
I could keep it going a bit longer. My laptop battery is just the one thing there.
Okay. I could probably do this for another 20 minutes if that's okay, and then
that's good. Yeah.
And then we'll just conclude and all of that. So
sure.
So let me see where we were. Jumping back to the Soviet Union and what you were saying. Now, when it comes to the Soviet Union, I have my criticisms too, but I would say that everybody having health care, everybody having health care, everybody having a job, everybody having a house or home, that wasn't a problem. But
I like that. And then also just some of the infrastructure, the architecture, like some of that stuff was incredible. Like
beautiful.
Like that stuff was beautiful.
gloomy but beautiful.
Russia's one of those places I really want to go to, and it's just so sad that that dream may never come true. And I hope it does come true. I really hope so, because I would love to go there.
It will. It could.
I think it will. Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. Like people think, oh, you will never be able to go to Russia. I'm like, look at like. I mean, did tourism to Germany stop? Like did Germany just not get any tourists after World War II? No, that's not true. People went to Germany after the war.
Well, I think it could happen because there's a on, I think it's on April the 11th. I'm not sure what it is, in April in Asheville. There's an act that's playing in Asheville. We were talking about it before the show, before this program, before the recording. What's the Russian Belarusian act that we were talking about? The band.
Malshat Dema.
That's it. Yeah. They're going to be playing in Asheville, North Carolina, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? That's like a 5-hour drive, but you know what? Maybe I should look into this.
I wish I could have seen them live. They played in Dublin, but I couldn't get tickets because it was sold out. But they're a band I want to see live.
Well, I mean, I'm like, okay, I figured that I was like, okay. Wow, I figured that they probably would not be touring the United States considering the situation of all that. But okay, that's good. They can tour. Okay, because with the embargo and that's going on and everything right now, I figured that traveling to and anything that's going on back and forth between Russia and the West would be more difficult than it was previously. So. Mm-hmm. That was kind of surprising in a positive way to know that maybe some things are still relatively normal.
Yeah, I think, it's just important to keep positive. And, I think one thing we need is just peace. Like one of the things, like even when I was a liberal, I was always anti-war. I always was anti-war. And I was always pro-universal healthcare. Like as soon as I found out that was a thing, I support universal healthcare. I supported tuition-free university, like ever since I knew that those things were possible. And that's the thing. Venezuela had tuition-free university even when my mother went to university. So like ever since at least the 70s, because my mom went to university in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. Yeah. Now my parents actually they never been to Venezuela, but in 2002 from San Juan down to Barbados and Trinidad. They took a tour. They went on an ocean liner tour, and they actually saw Venezuela from a small distance away. So they took some pictures and all that. So they were just.
I'd love to go back. I went twice when I was a baby.
There. Yeah.
Yeah, but like it was so long ago, that Chavez was not the president at that time. So the two times I visited was 1994 when I was just a few months old, and then 1997 when I was 3 years old. I barely have any memories of the time I went in 1997.
Yeah. I would like to. I would definitely like to do a lot of more traveling than I've done my fair share of traveling too, but I never been to Venezuela. I've been to Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands and in the Caribbean. I've been to England. I've been to Ireland, and I've been to France, and I've been to Canada. But and hopefully
I've traveled a lot. Like I've traveled to Israel, I've traveled to Turkey, I've traveled all over Western Europe. I've been to Poland, I've been to Czech Republic, I've been to Lithuania, I've been to Israel. I've also been to Australia. I've been there. I've traveled around the Caribbean because I did a lot of cruises with my parents. And my last big trip before the Lithuania trip was to Hawaii. That was really, really cool.
As I said, I would really love to go to Portugal next year if it happens. I may have to do some. I may have to cash out my 401k for this trip, but I think it'll be worth it. Oh
yeah, travel is one of the things I'm like. That's probably why I don't own a house. If I could own a house, is just I love to travel. I've been to Australia twice, and I'm like, screw it. You have one life, and probably the earth is going to burn. Might as well just enjoy my time here.
That's the way I look at it.
I think of that one Phil Oakes song, "When I'm Gone," and it's one of those songs that sounds sad, but the reality is you gotta make the most of your time on the planet while you're here. You have to keep fighting while you're here. You can't fight when you're dead, but you can fight while you're here, and that's what you got to do. You got to live your life in a way that if you were to die tomorrow, at least you can live with yourself. And I like to think that I do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I just want to do more traveling down the road, and I'm going to retire in a few short years. So when I do, that's going to be on the agenda right there too.
Yeah. Like my dream right now is to go to Japan. Like that's something that I'm like, oh, it would be cool to go for my 30th. And I turn 30 next year. And I would love to go to Japan for my 30th. It's been a dream. I mean, you've probably seen me take drinks out of the Sailor Moon mug. Sailor Moon was one of my obsessions when I was 6 years old. And that's probably what made me want to go to Japan. And actually, that is part of the inspiration why I call myself Angie Moon. So Moon is mainly for Keith Moon, but I'm also a Sailor Moon fan.
Well, I hope you will be in Japan on your 30th birthday.
Or around that, a little bit before, a little bit after. I don't care. As long as I get to go while I'm 30, I'd be very happy.
Well, as I said, and I hope to one day go back to the UK as well. I was bummed when I didn't get a chance to go to Scotland when I was in Ireland. I mean, I was happy in Ireland, but I really did.
If you make it to the UK, I'd be happy to meet up. I'd be happy to show you around because I'll be moved there by then.
What city you and your husband will be living in?
We're going to be living in the Birmingham area.
Okay, Birmingham. Okay, that's north of London.
Yeah, so it's in the Midlands, so it's pretty central to a lot of things. So it's not too far from Wales. It's not too far from London at all. The thing is, it's not the most touristy, but I'm actually okay with that because it's much more affordable than London. Like my husband was thinking of getting a job in London, but we'd never be able to afford a house there. Everything's just way too expensive in London, and I'd rather, own a house so I can finally decorate. I can finally, feel like a grown-up, because that's the thing. I'm so tired as a millennial of being infantilized because, oh, you don't own a house yet. And then the other reason people infantilize me is I don't have any kids. I'm child-free and I don't want kids. It's just climate change, the way the how much it costs. I don't see the point in having kids at all. And then, with me having, autism and various mental health issues and chronic pain issues, I don't think I can take care of a kid. I'm making a responsible choice here.
Kids cramp my style. It was just never for me. If for those that they want to do that and they find it rewarding, more power to them. But it's just something that just never appealed to me.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I wrote a blog post about this on my Medium, which will be linked down below. And I wrote about it, and it was called "Socialism is Family Values." And that's the thing. Conservatives will claim to support family values, but the thing is, conservative economic policies are not conducive to, family values. It's socialist ideas that are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah. In fact, their policies are absolutely runs contrary to the well-being of family life and everything. So, and that's one of the reasons why
my laptop is kind of running out of power. So,
no problem. No, okay.
I'll just move this over just a little bit here.
All right. Yeah, I got mine plugged in, so mine was kind of low on power too in the beginning.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Oh, yeah. That's okay. Yeah, mine was running low in the beginning too. That's why I had mine plugged in. So yeah. Where was I? Running to conservative. Conservative values do undermine the family more than anything else. I mean, because it's kind of this dog-eat-dog worldview. Does not allow quality time for a family setting.
Yeah, and then the other thing I would say about that is that, like these conservative ideas and neoliberal ideas, they just push into fascism because all these things, and I see it happening here in Ireland, and I worry about a rise of a far right. I mean, so far in Ireland, so good. We're not having too much of a rise of the far right, but I worry that there's the perfect recipe here because native born Irish people are being screwed over by the current system, and like young Irish people, they're leaving, and then they can't afford homes, they're not being paid well enough, healthcare sucks, education getting more expensive, and there's no motivation to stay, so the native born leave, and then obviously you need new workers, and who's going to come in? Immigrants. And the thing is, what is that going to lead to? Far right people are going to take advantage of that situation, take advantage of people's economic anxiety. And then, they're going to push the whole replacement theory. And what's creating that whole idea and giving credence to that? These right-wing policies. And that's something that I do worry about.
Yeah, I sometimes worry about it here too, as far as the rise of fascism, because it's like racism was faux pas here at one point, but it's like people are kind of footloose and fancy free about racism these days, and there was one commentator having a conversation with Tucker Carlson. His name is Jesse Kelly, and he's worse than Tucker Carlson. He basically said that the Republicans will probably one day embrace fascism down the road. I mean, he as if they're not doing it already. But it was just weird. But he was kind of making a loud confession right there.
Yeah, like that's the thing. And then I also see a lot of racism among the shit libs, but it's much more covert, and that's what scares me, is because people think I'm insane when I call out shit libs, when I call out, SJWs, wokes, whatever you call them. It frustrates me. Like, I think that liberals frustrate me more than conservatives. At least conservatives, anybody reasonable knows my problems with them. They aren't going to call me crazy for having problems with them. But as far as liberals, everyone thinks I'm crazy. Like, how could they possibly be racist? They're liberal. I'm like, they are racist. I'm going to show you how. Like Joe Biden, that's the thing. Like, I was just so upset when Joe Biden was the nominee. I was like, oh, come on. Like, how is he liberal at all?
Well, Joe Biden was a segregationist as a senator in the early 70s. And he's, he's made gaffes that were could be construed as nothing but racist over the years, and he's made condescending speeches toward the Black community. I mean, it just and then and then they're going to sit there and say anybody who's on the actual left are the ones who don't care about the disenfranchised. I mean, I'm like, come on now.
Yeah, like that's something that like frustrates me is I can't talk politics with my family, like my dad's family at least. My mom's family, there's a few people who are socialists. My great-grandmother was a socialist. My grandmother on that side was a socialist. But my dad's family, everybody's a liberal pretty much. And I've had family members just dismiss me and my criticisms of the Democratic Party, even though they're white and I'm, half Hispanic. And they're just like, oh, how could you say that about them? I'm like, fuck the Democrats, man. I don't like the Democrats.
Yeah, I'm just disappointed with the Democrats. They're dead end. They really are. This two-party system. Bernie Sanders and the squad were the last chance for the Democrats to redeem themselves, and it proved that they proved what a fraud that the party is. And I'm going to get reamed by people when they hear me say that, but the truth is the truth. We have here on the chat line, we'll talk to some of these people here on the chat line, and then we'll conclude. So let's talk to some of these folks here. Janine Queen of Tart says, hi, Angie and Willie. Hi, Janine. Let's see. Jimmy's greeting us. I work with Jimmy from KRTD Media, by the way. She's really cool. Let's see. Hey, Jimmy and Warren. If you ever get a chance, there's a program called Extra Booyah. He hosted. He has a great program. He has guests, and he has the secret show every Saturday night that he hosts with Jimmy. And I highly recommend that. So and Jimmy hosts a show called What on KRTD that I also highly recommend. And I co-host with her occasionally too. Let's see here. And everybody's greeting each other again. Let's see. Remember when Hillary pushed for universal health care? Yeah, but that wasn't real universal health care she was pushing for. I remember that when that happened.
Was that the 90s? Because that was so long ago that I don't even know. Maybe I was a baby then.
Yeah, very much so. I've often said that Bill Clinton and Rush Limbaugh turned me into a socialist. Two conflicting people. Well, Rush Limbaugh, because Rush Limbaugh made conservatism sound less cool, and he kept accusing Bill Clinton of being a socialist when I saw Reagan in Bill Clinton. So I was like, if that's I'm like, no, that's not socialism. I'm a socialist. So I went further left because of that. Let's see. Let's see here. Learn from the past, says Jimmy. Absolutely. Let's see. That's because skilled trades were more important than putting people in a worker line without skills. It's been on purpose. I think she was talking about the situation about Russia. We were talking about Russia and the trading and business going on between Russia and the West that still exists to some degree. So. Angie, it's been a pleasure having you here. And I really would love to continue this at some point in the near future. So I will hope
I'd love to be back when I have my book out. I'd love to talk all about my book. It's something that I'm just sitting here like, I can't wait to talk about this book because it's going to be amazing. A lot of your favorite musicians will be in it. If you like classic rock, there's going to be a ton of just stories about these musicians. And yeah, that's just what I love doing. Classic rock storytelling. That's what I love.
All right, and I will look forward to the book and everything, and again, even before, I would love to have you back. So
absolutely, I'd love to. It's been a pleasure. It's
absolutely
been very interesting talking to you, and just talking to someone who's just like-minded. That's just so hard to find these days. Like, I feel politically homeless because I feel like I'm too socialist for the libertarians, too libertarian for the socialists, too on PC for the left. I don't know where I belong. I'm just like, well, I'm just me. And I guess to quote one of my favorite bands, the Kinks, I'm not like everybody else.
Okay, what you just said just spoke my sentiment exactly. I couldn't have said it better by myself. That's exactly how I feel. So, that's what I go through in life. Projected by everybody from every direction. So in other words, don't feel bad. There are other people in the same boat. More than you think. So,
and I love getting to know them. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you're on that side, if you are very like-minded, please do follow me. Please read my blog posts. Send me a message. I'm happy to chat.
All right. So I'll be, as I say, I'm about ready to sign off. If you, when I sign off, I just probably need to chat with you very quickly before we part ways. So I'm going to sign off over here. So everybody, if you like what you heard, please press like and comment anyway. If you disagree with what I have to say, feel free to share the content on this channel. As the First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform. Utilize this, because we're the muckrakers of our time. Subscribe to this channel on all my platforms that you hear me mention it in. Reject corporate media, and get a second opinion, get 22 opinions, and as I said, reject corporate media every opportunity. Until next time, we will chat again in the future. Bye-bye.